everybody. It's 6:31. I guess we'll get Straight Talk rolling tonight. We've got our interpreter on board with us. Good evening and welcome. So tonight, I'd like to get started right away. We'll roll into our guest. Our guest is Tia Orr with SEIU State Council. And I'm going to hand it off to Tia to go ahead and introduce herself and give her a little background, and we'll roll into the Q&A pretty quick. So Tia, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bill. And hey, everybody. How are we doing, Local 1000? It's so good to be here today. And thank you so much for inviting me. I am fired up always when I get to meet with our state employees. A little bit of background about me. My mom was a state employee with Department of Insurance for over 35 years. She retired when she was 55 years old. And I remember marching with her and going on protests with her and contracts fights with her most of my life, and really connected me to Local 1000 specifically. So I feel like I'm here with family, and I'm excited to be here. And thank you, Bill and team, for inviting me here today. Just a little bit about me before we get started on this important topic, right? Today, we're going to talk a little bit about, and of course, hear questions from all of you about the power and importance of politics to SEIU as a whole, but specifically to Local 1000 as state workers. And God, what a topic that is. We're going to have, I know, a robust discussion about what that means, and dig into that a little bit more. Before I go into that, though, just a little bit more about me. I, again, am Tia Orr. I'm the executive director of SEIU California. SEIU California is the umbrella organization that works on behalf of you and your local and 16 other locals along with you to represent the legislative and political arm and interest of our members across the state. We have 700,000 members as a whole under SEIU California, which again, I have the privilege to be the executive director of, but it's really led by all of you, right? Members on the ground telling us what the needs are, where your struggles are at, what we need to push in the legislature, but also, right, what elections do we want to engage in so that we ensure that the folks that are making decisions in that Capitol building and in state institutional offices, constitutional offices, are ones that share the values of all of you as SEIU Local 1000 members and our brothers and sisters across the board and other 16 locals that we represent. I've been here for about 16 years, a long time, right? I've seen a lot of the changes in California politically, legislatively, and I think socially, as we see some of the unrest that exists across our communities and the demands who have only gotten greater as we've seen some difficulties with a lot of issues, social justice, racial justice, wages, and the fight for workers across the state. And again, it has been a privilege, let me tell you. I on the more focus of my job is I'm a mother of 3 kids. My oldest son is 25 years old, which I had to raise as a single mother for some time, and honestly really got to see in that experience the benefits of our government, right? I've had to rely on some of those services, from the services you provide as state workers to the services provided at the local level, and really just have an affinity and appreciation for our state and local government workers and public sector workers as a whole. So deeply connected, deeply passionate about the work that we do. And again, I wake up every day privileged to be able to work on your behalf. So enough about me. Let's go into the subject of the day, right? Why do politics and elections matter? I think all of you know, and hearing from all of you all hopefully today, we're a values-driven union, right? Our goal is to fight to make sure that workers have a voice in legislative and political decisions across the state of California, as well as the nation. We want to create a strong middle class. We want to eradicate poverty, get a goal of affordable health care, deal with racial justice and environmental justice and many other things. And of course, the contracts that we have to work to get the legislature to approve, and the governor that I know is coming up for you at Local 1000 fairly soon. But these are the values that we fight for every day. And sometimes when we get closer to achieving these values in the contracts we negotiate, but at the same time, we know that we also have to create a government that shares the values that you have to improve the lives of SEIU members, their families, and their neighbors. Another reason, and this has become more prevalent, I think, over recent years, corporate power has really infused itself into our political space. Millions, if not billions of dollars are spent by corporations who seek to gain more money, put more profit in their pocket as shareholders and CEOs, oftentimes at the expense of workers and the common good. Oftentimes, these corporations is to create an alliance of corporate Republicans, sometimes corporate Democrats, to stop progress that we've made for workers and families. We know Local 1000 members work tirelessly to provide services to communities. I was one of those individuals in those communities that reaped those services. But look, if corporate interests continue to dominate the political space or even have the potential to dominate the political space, those folks who make decisions in the legislature and in statewide offices are not going to be ones who have a consistent connection to the values that I know all of you have. It's imperative that our voices are heard in the elections that are going to matter for all of us. And that's why we must elect lawmakers who share those values, and we have to defeat corporate aligned politicians who do not. More recently, and I'll turn it over, Bill, just to some questions, the ballot initiative and initiative process has become really the stomping ground for multi-billionaires to put measures before us that attack workers, that take away your rights, even specifically as state employees. There was an initiative that was proposed this year. It didn't make it to the ballot thanks to all of our collective pushback that wanted to eliminate the rights of public sector employees from collective bargaining. It was called the Draper Initiative. We were able to push that back with the help of the Attorney General and ensure that that did not get on the ballot. There was initiatives to defund public schools. You see this attack on public sector workers constantly on these initiatives. There was an initiative to take away worker protections that was attempting to get on the ballot this year. And lastly, there was an initiative to cripple California's ability from being able to raise revenue that's necessary for us to score and realize a great contract for all of you that represents increases in wages, increases in benefits, and support to all of you for the services that you provide. That's just 4 issues that we know this year were attempted to be put on the ballot to really cripple our ability as public sector workers to grow, see our wages grow, and be recognized and appreciated in our communities. So look, it's important. I can talk about this all night, but I really want to hear from all of you on your questions and engage in a dialogue that explores this topic a little bit more. So Bill, again, thank you for having me. I'll turn it back over to you and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, so Tia, we at least have one hand up. We'll go to Frank Askin and ask him to unmute. Hi, Frank.
Good evening, Chair Hall, and good evening, Tia. And thank you, Tia, for everything that you do. I am a true believer in politics and a huge COPE contributor and a longtime COPE contributor. I contribute to COPE on a monthly basis. And I just want to touch on how politics is so important to us, especially as SEIU Local 1000 as state workers, because we often forget that who signs our paycheck? These are people that we elect into office, politicians that we elect. So politics do matter. And we often also forget that our contract, once it's ratified by the membership, it has to be voted on by the legislature and the governor. It crosses their desk. So they all have to vote on it. So politics does play a huge important role. And one thing I want to touch on that is kind of, I don't know the right word, maybe depressing to me, is that here in Sacramento at the state capitol, when we have our rallies and stuff down at the state capitol, our members that are bussed in from like Fresno and the surrounding areas, we have more members that are bussed in than the members that work like in a 1 to 2 block radius of the state capitol that's down there. I mean, come on, people, take at least 15 minutes on your break or something and join us so we can get a huge turnout at our rallies. And that's all I have to say for right now. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Frank. Have a great evening.
You too.
And we're working on all those issues. Let's go on to Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, this is the first time I'm joining the meeting because I had a coworker, Carlos, to call me and I just had to get on. I agree with what the last rep said about joining the meeting, but I think as a union member, we get a little discouraged because we're not seeing the force in the workplace. And when you're on the chopping block every day. I work at EDD. We get discouraged with turning in our vacation time and not getting approved for our vacation. Perfect example. I'm gonna put it out there. I'm having a colonoscopy this month. They're telling me I need to put in vacation time for that. I tried to email my union rep and I can't get a hold of them. So at some point, there has to be accountability on you guys' side for our force to be in numbers, for we to support us, for us to support you. I'm paying my union dues, but I don't see the support on our end when it comes to certain things. The managers are horrendous. EDD, these new managers, they're terrible.
So Sarah, I
Mhm.
appreciate your problems. Do you have a question for Tia around politics tonight? Or is
No,
it-
no. Well, the politics is, how do we change these laws? How do we get these laws changed? What do we need to do to get them changed? How do we become a force of reckoning in the workplace to get the laws changed so that the employers can believe in the union system? And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Tia, you have a response to?
Yeah, and thank you for the question. I mean, activism and getting out there is how we work to get laws changed, right? Getting the right people elected into office so they understand when they walk in what those values are. EDD, prime example, right? How many legislative oversight hearings have been had in the legislature recently about the problems at EDD and what caused those problems? Absent our advocacy and your voices being heard, it's easy to say that it's the workers that caused the problems there, when we all know far too well that the system has been flawed, that your IT systems are flawed, that there hasn't been enough investment in EDD on the workforce, the training, and the tools that you have to use to make that system function well. But legislators don't know that story unless people like you, Sarah, are in front of them telling that story, right? And the ability for SEIU not only to ensure that the people that you're talking to share in your values before you even meet with them, but that you have the ability to go to them, tell your story, and hold them accountable for changes that need to happen across the system. So I would say activism in your shop, but also activism outside of it. But again, that's only realized if we can come together arm in arm, 17 local strong, 700,000 members strong, and make sure that we're electing a legislature that understands your issues, is willing to hear your issues, and is willing to do something about it once they understand them. And I know in EDD, we've had a lot of those conversations recently. So Sarah, thanks for your question.
It really isn't that easy for us to get in front of the politicians and have these conversations with them, is it?
It's, you know what, it's not as hard if we're collective and we're together. I mean, there's one thing that these politicians know, especially if we are instrumental in helping get them there, they can't ignore us. We won't allow them to ignore us. And if they do ignore them, I think Frank mentioned the activities and the protests we have in front of the Capitol. That's when you make noise. I mean, we're boots on the ground and we get a little bit grimy with our work, right? We're going to march, we're going to yell, we're going to protest, and we're going to demand that they hear us because you're the workers. You are the drumbeat and the soul of California. So it's not easy, Bill. I think you're right. It requires activism, pressure, engagement from us. And the members have to be willing to do that and empowered to be able to do that. And it's necessary.
So let's move on. I think if I have it right, it's Chantel Gant. Chantel, can you unmute and join us?
Sure, thank you. I apologize, I came on right at the end of what you were saying, so, but I have two questions, and I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Is there anything being done about like people being able to telework permanently instead of as we go, like to permanently be stationed at home in these positions? That's my first question.
Okay, and what's your second?
And then my second question is, we used to have like a detailed, I think it was called a personal management handbook, where you can like look up things yourself about whatever, about leave, about V time, about different type of things like that, part-time versus full-time and stuff. And I don't know that where I found it, but it's really cut down to a minimum where there's no information in there. Is there something that replaced that manual for us to be able to research or do our own research, or
Well,
Do we have to go to the
so
union?
on your second question, a lot of the information you probably want to refer to is actually in your contract. And you can view an electronic copy of it on our webpage, or you can request through a Stewart, or you may even be able to request directly on our webpage to get a copy of the contract, the paper contract yourself, if you find that easier. We
And is
did
that
have SEI, www.seiu1000.org.
.org? Okay, thank you.
And
ahead.
then on the telework, we do have a permanent telework agreement. It's not it's not all encompassing. It will have to be improved in our next round of contract negotiations. And this does tie back to, you know, some of the decisions about how the state does business overall are political decisions. So the idea of telework and how people get compensated for telework, how the workforce is going to change between now and 2030. I don't know what that's going to look like at the moment, but I know it's going to change. So programs to get the workforce retrained. I mean, I don't want to scare anybody, but I can envision the year 2030 where there are no employees left at the Department of Motor Vehicles. So how do we transition those employees into other jobs, maybe jobs that are even better paying? That's going to take training and stuff. Those are tasks that we need to engage with the state in collective bargaining around. And as we do the collective bargaining piece, there's also a political component to it. So it's not just a one path to win. Thanks for the questions. Let's go to Teresa. I have Teresa's iPhone. Can you unmute?
Hi,
Hey, Teresa.
Hi.
how are you both? Tia, it's great to see you. I actually want to move to the national. So I was just reading an article that the Republicans feel that the Central Valley is an easy pickup in a newly formed district for Congress. And I was hoping that State Council had a plan for our Central Valley and making sure that we keep those seats.
We do. We actually aggressively participate in some national politics as well. I should have mentioned that, Teresa. So thanks for the reminder. It's extremely important. We know there is a big threat of losing House this year nationally. And what we're doing is trying to really have a Central Valley focused strategy, right? A lot of folks that are out there are registered to vote, some of them not. But if we were able to turn out all of folks that share our values, workers, we might be able to pick up some of those seats. It's tough. Right? It's a district that's pretty rural. There's a whole lot of issues that happen in that district. And there's a big Republican base in those districts, but we are aggressively getting out and literally knocking door to door. That's the benefit of what SEIU does. To my earlier point, we do things a little bit differently. You know, we're not just texting, we're not just phone calling, we're putting people on the ground. We knock on doors and have conversations with folks to tell them why this election matters. What's at stake for elections like this? From workers' rights to environmental rights to racial justice, issues that matter to folks even in the Central Valley. But it is, I know, a district, Teresa, to your point, that the Republicans are focusing on. They often do. But we're doing the same thing, and we're a force to be reckoned with out there. It's going to be tight. It's not going to be easy. But I think we're eyes wide open about the potential and the risk that we have if we lose some of those seats, what it can mean for the Congress. There's also down ticket races there too. So when there's a congressional race there, there's statewide races as well. There's board of supervisor races underneath that as well. So when you turn people out for the congressional race, we also maybe can get some ideological shift for the state senators or state assembly members or board of supervisors that are running, that share our values with that strategy of knocking on doors and getting people to turn out. There's no question in the Central Valley that the voters are there. It's just a matter of getting them to the polls and getting them to turn their ballots in. And we're pretty good at that. Again, we're dogged. We leave no stone unturned. And that's the political machine that SEIU has with your help. But yeah, that's a focus of ours this year, Teresa. So thanks for the question.
Good evening, Mario. Can you unmute and join us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tia. Well, may I be direct?
Please.
Yes. Okay, very good. Well, I'm not a big proponent of politics, I'll be quite frank. I'm more of a union activist. Okay. And I'm gonna go back, I just want to give you one example. EDD, Employee Development Department. Okay. And during the pandemic, they hired 10,000 limited term, full-time intermittent, circumventing the contract and so forth. Who allowed this? The politicians. Nothing was done. We should have gone with unfair labor practices in the civil court and shove it down. You know what? We didn't do anything. Number two, you say that our politicians support workers' rights. Well, PEPRA, the Public Employees Public Reform Act of 2013, that was very detrimental to state employees. That was passed by a Democratic legislature and a Democratic governor. Another one, very hurtful towards workers and very, very close to my heart on this one, the 2015 Workers' Compensation Reform Act of 2015, which put a lot of burden on the injured workers. Now, SCIF, the State Compensation Insurance Fund, God bless them, they're making money hands over fist, but it's on the backs of injured workers, Tia. And I can go on more and more, but I don't want to get into debate here, but I'd be happy to engage in a debate with you or Bill, and I'll discuss more and more in more detail. But you know, we'll bring it forth before the SIU membership. That's what I like to see, because really, I do not like this political activism. Respectfully, we should be doing union activism. Wear the union label. So please, Tia.
Yep, I
your
got you.
rebuttal.
It's a good question, and I love the direct question. So no worries here. Look, just because folks have a Democrat or a D after their name or a Republican, that doesn't mean their ideological values are always aligned with us. And I think I can sit on this call all night and talk about the crazy stuff the legislature has moved, the troublesome stuff that the governors have signed in the past. There's no 100% guarantee that even the folks we get behind all the time are going to do everything that we ask. There's one thing I can probably guarantee, though, that if we don't engage with them, your list that you have now of the problems that we've had would be significantly longer, right? I think about the ability for us to pass minimum wage. I think about the contracts that we have to get done for Local 1000 and that we've gotten done in the past, right? I think about healthcare cost affordability and many other things that we were able to get done. Those things happened because we had some legislators, not all. Trust and believe you me, I can give you a long list of folks that are very problematic in this current legislature because they're not going to do everything right. They tend to do more right when you're putting the pressure on them, when you're telling them what your expectations are. So the question I would even turn back is what happens if we don't engage in politics at all? Do those things that you described get even worse, right?
I will give you the answer on that one. Politicians don't really care about protesters out there. What they care about most is embarrassment. We should have been out there in the front steps demanding to have these 10,000 full-time intermittent employees, as I said, EIDDD, make them limited term full-time so that way they can get benefits.
Right.
As limited term full-time, they didn't get no benefits at all. That's a travesty, Ms. Tia. Or
yep.
That's one. And you have not answered the question about PEPRA nor the Workers' Compensation Reform Act of 2015, which I can talk in more detail, which is really, really a travesty of justice towards injured workers.
No, I understand. I don't know a whole lot about the policy and those specific things. I do know enough about them to know that they were pretty bad the way that they came out in those years. The only thing I can say is as those policies are being considered, right, your voice, being able to pressure politicians and protest, embarrass them oftentimes. They also move them sometimes, right? And not every tactic is going to work with every politician. I get it. There's some, kind of icky context to politicians in some ways, the way that they characterize themselves and sometimes their behavior. Our job is to pressure them to do exactly what we need them to do. We win sometimes, we don't win all the time, right? I can't agree with you more, but we have to continue the pressure, even for those workers at EDD to have the long-term jobs that have benefits. That fight is still ongoing. We can still fight for that. But if, for example, let me just give you some perspective. Right now in this legislative session or this legislative body that we have, a minimum of 48% of our legislature is going to be replaced with new lawmakers. 48% of the legislature that you see today that had something to do with the EDD circumstances as you just described. Maybe not the PEPRA, that was a little while ago, but many of the legislators that are going to be leaving are going to be replaced by new legislators. It's incumbent upon us to ensure that the legislators that are going to come in are not ones that are going to go against our values, that are going to go against EDD workers being permanent and full-time, that are going to do continued damage to things like PEPRA, our pensions, and workers' compensation. We could have a completely half of the legislature is going to be brand new, and we want to shape that, right? So again, I don't have the answers on the specific policy, but I will say that our influence and us getting folks in the legislature that we can communicate with, pressure, hold accountable is imperative if you compare it to the contrary.
I respectfully disagree, Tia. And again, I would welcome a debate in front of the whole SAU membership on this whole topic. Because I can bring out more facts and numbers, because that's what counts, respectfully. And political pressure is good, that's fine, but it's legal pressure that really puts the screws on the legislator. That's what gets in the papers. That's what embarrasses them.
All right, Mario, we
Okay,
appreciate,
Bill, I know how you work.
we appreciate your time tonight. We have other hands up, and yes, you do understand how I work, so thanks. Oh, let's go on. Adam Toki, good evening. Can you unmute and join us? What's your question?
Yeah. There's always colorful people in these meetings. But for Tia, I guess I would use the time to ask an actual question, which is, the zeitgeist seems to be moving politically, right? With the societal view on unions. So we have Amazon successfully doing a Starbucks. This little creep is happening that seemed impossible before. But the corporations also seem to have a duty for their public perception as well, right? So they can't, as much as they're trying to slam these efforts, they're still going through. But I suppose politically, what do you think is going to be the reaction? You were saying earlier, we're seeing initiatives like that. Is it going to be more of that, or do you think there'll be more diplomatic? That if they see that it's a bull market on labor, that they'll maybe comply more, or what do you see the next 5 years in regards to the labor movement overall?
Talking about complying more, the corporations, are you asking?
Yeah, the corporations, it's right. Union busting in the 70s, they're actually clubbing people over the head. People were dying, right? You couldn't do PR like that today, right? So yeah. We're in a totally different environment than just 40 years ago. And the public is more supportive of unionization in those 40 years, or so I believe, so I've read. So, what in terms of politically for corporations to push legislatures, like you were saying, they they're data experts, they pinpoint specific areas in Sac County. What are the I guess how is that happening with labor too, and that same kind of pinpointing of getting things done in terms of Starbucks and Amazon? Are we going to see more of that, or are there studies for that, or what is your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys can all feel and see the fire underneath workers, right? That the frustration, the great resignation, they call it. I actually think that workers are just fired up and fed up and saying enough is enough, right? And you see that, as you mentioned, with Starbucks and Amazon. We see it with fast food workers. We see it with clinic workers. We're leading on a number of campaigns that hope to bring more folks into the union. But let me tell you, these corporations are pushing back with everything that they have, and they really do it with their pocketbook. right? They have millions and millions of dollars, far more than what we have, right? To be able to put things on the ballot and elect a legislature that shares their values. The good news is that 2/3 of the public are now favorable of unions, according to a 2021 study. There's a bit of a shift that's happening in society about the support for unions. The difficult part for us is the federal laws are stacked against us. Federal laws are put there in the National Labor Relations Board that make it very difficult, if not impossible at times, to organize workers in the traditional card check structure that was put out there by the federal government. So we got to get creative, and we're getting creative on the union side, right? How do you organize workers in a non-traditional structure to be able to have a seat at the table and be able to collectively bargain in places like Starbucks and Amazon and the likes? Now, the sad thing about the Starbucks and Amazon campaigns, as fiery as the workers are, because it's moving towards an NLRB structure in the National Labor Relations Board, those folks may never see a first contract. And the corporations know that. They'll invest everything they have to continue to keep that block there at the federal level from allowing them to organize. So what we're doing in California, for example, is setting up sectoral boards, right? Where we set standards for industries like fast food and like clinics so that they can have a voice and they can set standards in their industry. We almost have to rewrite the rules, right, in some way, so the federal government isn't who's governing our ability to organize workers into a union. I think the hope I feel in this is the workers are leading the way, right? And again, 2/3 of the public are supportive of unions at this point. I think the concern that we have, again, is corporations are sitting at billions and billions of dollars, right? That's why it's so important, right? To the earlier question, that we get elected officials in office. Remember, 48% of this legislature is going to change that share that value, that they're one of those 2/3 of folks in our public that support unions moving forward. Because yes, we have to get creative. And no, I don't think the corporations are going to stop pushing back against workers. They fire workers who are on the front lines. We hear that every single day. They punish them in every way that they can if they engage in union activity. Luckily, they have us around them to protect them, right? And hold arms with them and make sure that we have elected officials that will help us in that regard as well. Hopefully I answered your question, but I'll pause there and see if there's any follow-up.
You know, there's another piece of this that we have that corporations don't have. You know, while corporations have a lot of money, we have a force of people that when they activate and they engage, then they can go out and do the work. The face-to-face work of talking to voters, talking to their neighbors, their family, their union coworkers. That can really make a bigger difference at the end of the day than the dollars. So, you know, while it's not financially a balanced playing field, we're not completely powerless either, right?
And Bill, I just wanted to add one more thing. I know we don't talk about this often, but the importance of somebody like the Attorney General. The Attorney General is up for election as we speak. We're hoping that Rob Bonta is able to pull this out, but there's threats, right, to that position. The Attorney General is the one that helps write title and summary for initiatives, right? And that title and summary either tells the truth about the holes and the risk of initiatives, or you're going to have somebody there that doesn't do that at all. So all these things connect, right? All these possibilities, all the places that corporations play into are connected to some of these elected officials that have the final say. Of course, we want people in those positions that share our values and not the values of corporations. If they do win some of those elections, we're in a far worse place that I think the brother earlier described, Mario, about some of the things that we haven't been able to get done.
And I think like for us as state employees, the position of the Attorney General has proved to be more critical to us for the last 12 years or so than even who the governor is. Really important for us. Let's move on. We have Octavio Herman. Can you unmute and join us?
Hello.
Hi.
I don't feel, or I'm paying my union dues, but then like when I asked questions of my union rep, she wasn't available. And then there was all that ousting with the president. So, I mean, what are we doing to like get questions answered? Because like I bought a home, and then I found out that you can live anywhere because CDT went to full telework, or at least for the ones that don't have to like physically be at the data center.
Well, you can't live anywhere. You still have to live in the state of California to be able to telework.
You see, there's another kind of disconnect. One of the supervisors was saying that some of the people had moved. Well, that's within the state, but they had moved to the coast, and they're talking about possibly out of state and all these other things. So, yeah, there's.
Well, I can tell you that we're fighting a fight right now with people who have moved out of state, even just across, I mean, a few miles across the state line into Nevada, who aren't currently being allowed to telework. And some problems, there are some of our members who have moved as far away that I know of as Atlanta, based on conversations with management, who are now facing either coming back to California, finding a California mailing address, or facing termination. So tonight we're talking about politics. So do you have a question around politics and how that impacts you?
Nothing. I can't think of anything that would relate to labor. Right now the whole Uvalde. I have opinions about that.
Okay, well, we appreciate you calling in, and we'll see if we can get our reps to answer questions more promptly and more fully.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great evening. Good evening, Dahlia. Can you unmute and join us?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Tia, for being on this very important call today. And I wanted to say that I used to be like Mario saying, why do we need to be involved in politics? Why are people phone banking, et cetera, et cetera? And then there was the recall of Gray Davis. Arnold Schwarzenegger was voted in at that recall election. And then we saw what happened when politics goes crazy. I'm of the generation of state worker who remembers having 3 unpaid furlough days. And, people talk about overwork and so forth, which we are. And when we were furloughed then, not only were we out monetarily, but when we came back, we had 3 extra days of work to catch up on. And anyway, during that time, I realized, yes, politics is very important. I was introduced to COPE. And so for those people who don't want to be involved in politics, then, you don't have to, though it is very helpful. It can change your mind about politics getting involved. But for those who do want to be involved in elections, politics, and so forth, join COPE. You could join for, I think, as little as $10 a month. That isn't like the super PAC that the Koch brothers have or the NRA, but we stand for California's working families and the values we have. And one of the questions that I have for you, Tia, is several years ago, this would have been under the Jerry Brown administration. We had member lobbyists, and we went and we visited members of the state Senate, the state assembly, and it really was very impactful, both for the participants of the union and for the electeds that we were talking to. And there was one bill in particular that we were very interested in, and it was in regards to employee discipline. And I was wondering, and Jerry Brown vetoed it, but it basically, I believe Reggie Jones Sawyer had introduced the legislation, and it was for those people who find themselves getting a letter of warning or some kind of discipline in their state personnel file, or I guess this was for all public employees. And under Mr. Sawyer Jones law, that time period would have been brought down to 1 year. It got to the governor's desk and Jerry Brown vetoed it. And I was wondering if that law was going to be resurrected. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question and comments. And I can't underscore enough the importance of COPE. We talked a little, I know this wasn't your question, but let me just say this real quick, just to underscore. We might not be able to match corporations' power and dollars, but we can do is we can match with boots on the ground. We can match with your stories and the lobby days that you talked about. It might not seem like it has an impact. I can tell you as a lobbyist, I used to be a lobbyist on the front lines. After you guys met with legislators and shared your stories, things were completely different. They would recite your stories when they're debating proposals on the floor. They would recite your stories and the personal impact of specific policies that are being pushed in committee and on the dais and in the press. Like your voice kind of resonated with them and they were able to share that as part of the reason why policies needed to move or not. So can't stress enough the importance of that. And of course, lobby days where state workers can be heard by elected officials, especially as we're going to have 22 new elected officials coming into the Capitol. We should educate them and school them about the important things for Local 1000, and would love to connect with you, Bill, and your team to be able to do that if you so wish.
I am certain we would enjoy doing that.
It's powerful. It makes a big difference. And I think, Dahlia, to your other question, I haven't heard of that bill being resurrected. I remember that to some degree, and Reggie Jones Sawyer putting that bill forward. He is a champion, an SEIU member of 721 actually, and now a legislator that's in office. I'm sure he would be happy to do almost anything that we need at Local 1000. And so if there's interest from the members and Bill on your team in that decision, we can look next year as the legislative session starts about those bills being resurrected. But I haven't heard anything recently, Dahlia, of that bill being proposed in the legislature as of now.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
So Dahlia, there's some work we can do together.
Definitely, definitely. That's, you know, management has been going crazy the last 2 years. And I've never seen them trying to put so many letters in people's files. And that's it, people are teleworking. So, you know, I'd love to work with you on that, Bill.
All right, super. Thanks, have a great evening.
You too.
Good evening, Alex. Can you unmute and join us?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you for taking my call. So I just have a question about raises, and I've been listening in every week, but I was just wondering politically what might get the most buy-in. And I'm just wondering like an option A, B, or maybe a C that I'm not even thinking of, because I keep seeing that people want to get an across the board 21% raise over 3 years or something to that effect. So I was wondering politically if that would get buy-in. I honestly don't think it would, because a raise during a big recession might get very negative feedback from the public. So I was wondering if it would be possible to instead request a large enough COLA to offset the impacts of all this recession is going to wreak havoc on everybody and prices are going to go up. So could we instead ask for a big COLA and then a little raise to make the dollars that we earned actually equal to the dollars that of yesterday, the same as today and tomorrow. So I'm thinking that would probably get more political buy-in from the public, just like, hey, we're just asking that our dollars equal $1. And then we're only asking for a little bit more, like a 2 or whatever, a 3% raise a year. Or if there's some other option which politically would get more buy-in than either of those two, I don't know. And since Tia is on here, appreciate her being on here. And I'm wondering what her thoughts are.
Thank you for the question, Alex. I probably can't go into the specifics of where you guys are in your ask of the contract, but I can say politically, right? We are sitting on a budget surplus of $99 billion. $99 billion is what this legislature is contemplating as we speak on how they're going to spend the additional money that wasn't expected a couple years ago when we did the budget. Now, you're right, Alex, there are some projections that we're going to kind of hit the bottom, right? And then a recession could potentially be looming. We don't know that yet. We only can deal with the facts and what we have in front of us now. And where we are now is we have a progressive tax structure that Local 1000 played a role in, actually, when we passed Prop 30 and Prop 32, which many of you were very active on, to ensure that we had enough revenue coming into the state that we can handle the bread and butter issues. And of course, our state employees and other local government employees to have, you know, a decent enough wage where they can provide for their families and take care of their lives. We know that inflation has skyrocketed up to a level that the current salaries that you guys have is not suitable. So I think that the legislature, depending on these elections that are coming up, I think that we can get a legislature that's primed up to do something pretty big for state workers in a contract. And I think that we have a governor that understands that is going to be the demand of not only Local 1000, of every single SEIU member we have across the state. Our hope is that we unite all of our 17 locals on something as important of your contract in the MOU that has to be voted on by the legislature. Those relationships, communicating with those legislators about why a raise or a COLA is important and what it means to you, make sure that you're on the priority list of things that need to get done while we're sitting on a record surplus as we speak. And of course, we have to be prepared, Alex, for revenue and changes in our revenue that may present a different challenge next year. But as of now, we're sitting on a pretty hefty lump sum of money that should afford us the opportunity to push the legislature and the governor into a contract that at least recognizes the work that you do at Local 1000 and ensure you're making enough on your paycheck to not only just get by, but to live great lives that are commensurate with the dedication that you guys provide all of the folks who rely on government services across the state of California. So a lot to do there, but look, we're not in a recession yet. And I think there's a lot of pressure that we need to start building up almost immediately, Bill, I would say, on the legislature and the governor on the demands of our contract that's soon to be coming.
Well, you already know that I've reached out to you and we've already had conversations. So, and those will continue. Thank you, Alex. And let's move on. So here we have a very famous customer that you may recognize. Good evening, Steve. Can you unmute and join us?
Sure. Stephen O'Leary, President of DLC 723 and member of the COPE Committee. And Tia, thank you for being here with us. And thank you for talking about the importance of the Attorney General, Rob Bonta, and our support for him. Because it's just historically, that position, as you mentioned, he was able to help block the Draper initiative by giving the ballot designation, telling the truth on that initiative. So that's when Draper dropped it, because he knew he couldn't get signatures on it. And we have to recall a few years back when Kamala Harris was running for Attorney General. SEIU, Local 1000 is one of the big contributors. Did a last minute radio ads in Los Angeles, and she barely won that Attorney General's race. And it was so important to us because right after that, the forces out there were trying to put an initiative on the ballot to change our pension plan, to change CalPERS from a defined benefit where you know you're getting $255 to changing it to defined contribution where they give you $400, you have to invest it yourself. And hey, if stock market goes down, you lose. She wrote a ballot designation saying they would affect police officers, nurses, and teachers. And that killed that initiative. So it's so important that we help Rob Bonta in this election. Folks, if you can get out there and help, tell your family and friends. And maybe there's some more you might want to share about the Attorney General and the things he's done to help us. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work you do. It's good to see you. I think you said it right. The Attorney General's office is vital for the labor movement. It is vital. It helps us continue the work that we're doing, like we said, on title and summaries alone. Imagining a corporate leaning Attorney General, we would be facing so many additional threats on the ballot, again, from collective bargaining to taxes and even more. We'll likely see many anti-worker forces file title and summary in 2024, including Draper and his initiative all over again, especially if we lose that Attorney General seat. our movement is most vulnerable in the ballot measures. Like I told you, that is the place where I think corporations have realized they have the most ability to beat us is on the initiative side, because it's a money game, right? They can put $200-300 million in on an initiative, and oftentimes that's tough to beat on the initiative side. We just can't afford to lose this one, right? So I just echo your request for folks to participate and join in so we can help Bonta get over the finish line on this proposal. I mean, on this election that he has. I know we're putting together an effort not only amongst our SEIU colleagues, but other allies, because we actually think there's a path for Bonta to win this election, as well as other constitutional officers. I mean, Rob Bonta has been a champion for us for many years, even prior to his experience at the Attorney General as a legislator. And of course, with him being Attorney General in the short time that he's been there, they not only oversee issues about holding corporations accountable, to the earlier question about Amazon and Gig and Lyft and how we organize workers. He's the entity that holds those corporations accountable and puts them on blast if they're doing anything that goes against law, which they often try to do. He also leads in criminal justice, which SEIU has gotten more involved in year over year, not only to ensure that our communities are safe, but also to make sure that staff are supported and we have the necessary resources to make sure that we have a system that allows our communities to be safe and operate in the way that we would all want them to be. So I can't stress enough the importance of the Attorney General seat. It is a fight. It is going to be tough, but we do believe together, if we can join with allies, we have a path to hopefully get Rob Bonta across the finish line.
So, you know, I think I've been remiss. Here we are, we're talking about politics. June 7th is election day. It's next Tuesday, right? If you haven't done your mail-in ballot, you probably need to get that in the mail. If you mess up your mail-in ballot, show up in person, make sure you vote. I messed up my mail-in ballot, so I'm gonna have to show up in person. Not enough time to take a chance on getting another one. So, you know, we haven't reminded everybody that they need to get out and vote in the primary. That's important, right? So let's move on. We've got Kimberly. Kimberly, can you unmute and ask your question?
Hi.
Hi.
So my question is in regards to what is the union doing to keep up membership or to get new members on board? Besides, I know you guys are saying you guys are rallying and all that, because I do want to piggyback what was said prior about keeping the fire alight and wanting to get that new membership. I work for DMV, and you know, we have a lot of issues going on, and it's really hard to get the new employees that we have on board when we fail to see the union showing up at our workplace and getting that fire going when we need them there. So what is the union doing to keep that membership up and to get those new employees on board with the union with the help of its members that are in field offices across the board with different departments?
Well, thanks. Thanks for that. What DMV do you work at?
I work at LA Metro. We're an IBC. And the reason it's a little bit harder for us to get a lot of union representation in there because we're not a field office. So we're not really looked at. And that's where the problem lies, is that because we're kind of overlooked, we don't get a lot of that fire there. And we do have a lot of people coming on board. So I myself am now trying to sign up to be a steward. So I'm trying to get people on board and to, you know, get that fire going. It's really hard when, you know, the flicker isn't there to begin with.
So thanks. So I appreciate you looking at becoming a steward. We need more stewards. I encourage you to follow through with that.
I am. I plan to.
And along with that, we are moving to do member work with the international and ourselves. We're investing in staff. We're changing program as to how we go out and talk to people in the field. Every Wednesday is now an organizing day for our entire organization, where we were not doing that recently. So there are changes in place. They're not fully executed yet. The board will have to decide on some of those at its meeting in June. However, I do hear you. I do understand that with COVID and with the changes in the organization, that many work sites have been left to lie idle, really. But we are changing that, and you will see a bigger presence from us.
And the one thing on that bill that we should just note, talk about politics and attacks, right? The Janus versus AFSCME decision that happened back in 2018, I believe, that was a direct attack on our ability to have members in the union, right? The Freedom Foundation, a far right-leaning group, their whole agenda is to stop union membership. Why do they want to stop union membership? Is because they know that we are powerful when we're collective and when we act together. They know that our numbers mean something. We might not, again, be able to match their money, but when we get boots on the ground and we go flood legislative offices and we elect people that share our values, they know for their agenda, they don't get a whole lot done. So this decision was made in the courts that allows workers to sign away from the union. It doesn't allow us to talk to union members in the same way that we used to, or sign members up in an easier way. We have to get out there and talk to more workers. COVID did complicate that a whole lot. We have new employee orientations that we have for new employees that come on. I imagine, Bill, that was paused to some degree, at least in person during COVID, which obviously makes things a lot tougher. I think every local is dealing with that. But just remember, the difficulty in signing folks up came from a right-wing organization that intended to do that on purpose to circumvent and stymie your power as a union.
And, the whole Janus story is interesting in the piece that, people don't know. The story that wasn't told was 2 weeks after that decision, the gentleman who was an Illinois state employee left his job with the state of Illinois and went to work for a right-wing think tank for a whole lot of money in Washington, D.C. So that was a quid pro quo, a reward for, giving them the pathway to make union life more difficult for public sector employees, right? Somehow we have to hope that more of these stories get told for what they are. Let's move on. Hi, Elliot. Can you unmute and join us?
Hi. Yeah, I wanted to follow up. I heard one other person comment on this, and I really would like to know what kind of pressure we're putting on politicians surrounding work from home, because it's $7 a gallon for gas right now. And I work for the Fish and Wildlife. They moved our office out to West Sacramento. I don't know if anyone around here has been to West Sacramento recently, but the public transit options out there are abysmal. So I really want to know what we're doing about work from home, because my boss and his boss are starting to talk about return to office. And that's going to be, I don't know how many thousands of dollars out of my pocket every month, And I just think it's wild, especially considering we've been working so well from home. So, I mean, this may not exactly be the right place to ask about this, but it's the pressure is mounting. I'm getting scared for my wallet here. I can't afford my rent.
It's absolutely understandable. And these are dynamics that we're dealing with on a regular basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we don't have a COLA in our contract that will stave off some of this unforeseen changes in the financial world, right? The inflation that we're dealing with, the price of fuel that we're dealing with. When the state moves offices around without considering mass transit options or without considering parking options. And I don't know any of us that aren't dealing with the pressure from the increase in prices. I mean,
so I guess my question is, what kind of pressure are we putting on politicians to make sure that we're going to, be able to do these things or afford our lifestyle, and I don't live large or anything like that. And I'm just really worried about this. And I don't know, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think there's two types of pressure, and I'm going to let Tia pitch in on this because she started to answer in a second, but there's two types of pressure, right? One type of pressure is what we can do at the bargaining table, and that pressure requires membership. Membership equals power, power equals pressure. And the way the state sees us, as has been told to my face, is that if they're a member, the state figures they're unhappy. If they're not a member, the state looks at them as being willing to take anything the state offers. And the state hasn't traditionally been willing to offer anything that they absolutely don't have to. So, so one solution, of course, is membership. That equals power. That equals a better contract. The other side of it is pressure on the political world to make sure that there's money available for a better contract, to make sure that the message is getting down to the state departments that we negotiate with, that the status quo in the past is not what wants to be continued, right? There are no easy, simple, fast solutions for this. And myself, along with many other state employees, are going to have a pretty painful experience for the next probably 12 months. Even with a 2.5% raise in July, it's just not enough. And we're going to feel some pain until we get our next contract. And with that, I'll let Tia chime in.
No, I was going to say a lot similar to what you said, Bill, so I won't be redundant. But I mean, one thing that you should know, I believe that there is a recognition that our work lives are changing. I think COVID, exposed a number of things, problems in different industries, but also the different styles and abilities for people to work and function. And I think, yes, the question of telework, how much that's maintained, how many workers are able to do it, under what construct are they able to do it in, that's going to be a discussion for the whole legislature to grapple with. They're dealing with that themselves, even with their own individual employees. So I think, one, there's going to be opportunities for us to educate, make demands through our contract, and hopefully get the legislature to share in those demands and those values that we're asking for, including something as tangible as being able to work from home. And it's really going to take the education that you just schooled us on. Like, the inflation's too high. I can't make it. I need more money in my pocket. This is going to be an inconvenience to me in a serious way. They need to be educated about that stuff. And that comes from the conversation we had just with the previous question about getting out to legislators and telling your story, meeting with them and telling them what you're demanding. And then, of course, yes, getting ready for the contract fight that we'll have with the administration and settling a contract that includes supports for more telework if that's what you guys so choose. But the legislature plays a big role in that. Your voices play even a more important role in that, in letting the legislature know that that is what your demand is.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I just want to. I guess I'm taking up too much time, so I'm gonna mute after this. But I just wanted to make it clear. Like, I'm not even necessarily talking about a raise. I'm just talking about like right to it, like the right to work from home. Like, I don't want to drive 45 minutes through traffic, waste gas, put pollution into the air, spend $7 a gallon in my car that gets 40 miles a gallon, but still, that's I think it's like a tank of gas every 2 weeks, and that's not cheap. I don't know. It just seems like so blind to send us back to work like this.
And just so you know, your bargaining team, Irene Green, your vice president of bargaining, everyone involved in the telework table was making the points and asking the questions. Why do you want to bring state employees back into the office when they've been working successfully for over 2 years through the pandemic? And in a lot of cases, productivity has actually been higher with people working from home. So what's the real point of bringing them back to the office? Other than the fact that, you have a manager who's probably afraid that he won't have a job if he's not managing people. And the only role model he has to manage people is to have them in chairs and cubicles in an office, right?
Yeah, we
So-
got an email from our director saying that we did better than ever under telework, but it's time to go back. And I'm kind of going, the hell? Anyway,
Right, all right. And
I don't
think-
waste too much time.
No, and your points are valid and real, and shared by many, I can assure you, and shared by everybody who's working in the union office, on your behalf. Hi, Melba, you want to unmute and join us?
Yes, hi. Thank you for getting to me.
We're trying.
No, hi, everyone. I'm actually one of the EDD workers that is being affected by the cut. So also a first-time member through a union. I've always kind of been excited to get a state job, and all this kind of happened through the pandemic. So, I mean, I knew it was a contract. I was happy that it got extended for another year. Obviously, you know, it didn't pan out the way I was hoping. I did sign up for the lapse storage program, and unfortunately, it kind of overlapped with the training they were asking me to take. So I ended up missing that stored training. But I guess my question, since I am new, there's two. Will there be an out of work list that could be established for apprenticeships that could be offered to those folks who are being laid off? Potentially, obviously, we are willing to work. If there's, I try to keep my eyes open for those apprenticeship opportunities. I didn't see too many throughout my contract. So at least that were local, because I'm in Southern California. Most of those were being offered in Sacramento and not really through the EDD. So that was one question, just because I know the format for a lot of other unions is to have an out of work list. So I'm not sure how that would work with SEIU. And then the second question will be, since my contract ends in August, can I continue on paying dues on my own to stay involved, to stay maybe hopeful that I can look for an apprenticeship opportunity, or how would that work? And then lastly, where do I find the list of candidates that I can support on behalf of SEIU? I know a lot of the times I use you guys as a cheat sheet to see like if you guys are supporting them, I vote for them. So those are my three, I guess it was 3 questions.
Watch your mailbox. I received several, as you referred to them, cheat sheets in my mailbox from SEIU. So
We
one
also
watch-
will have it on our website too. It's seiuca.org.
I think that's where I end up going.
There
We
you
have it
go.
on the website. I'll put it in the chat as well.
So the limited term hires are an issue that we've been talking about. You now have experience as a state employee doing the work. So one of the things that we're discussing is how can we assist you in looking for other state work, and how can we help you be successful gaining state employment down the road? How can we guide you to look for jobs where the skills that you've acquired and have are transferable? So those are some of the discussions that we've been having in-house. So I don't know that the state will have an SORA list for the contract employees. I don't believe so. We would love to keep you as a member. So we look forward to reaching out to you, Melba, and engaging you. The other piece of this, of course, is there is a political aspect of this as to expanding our apprenticeship and training programs. Now, we call them apprenticeship programs, but like we have our LVN to RN program. But we have to get the state to agree to allow us to expand these programs, to move them statewide. And that comes back to putting the political pressure on the departments and on Cal HR to agree to do this. So there is a whole political component to the expansion of those programs, and not just in geographic area, but also in the type of programs that we offer, what we can make available to people. And this is going to become more important as the workforce changes more in the future. So this was a conversation with the bargaining group. I know that they are looking at it and discussing it to move forward. I don't have all the answers on that, but I hope that we can touch base with you and assist you in being successful in getting full-time state employment. There are opportunities out there. We just have to connect enough people with those opportunities. Let's go on and talk to Austin for a minute. Austin, can you unmute and join us?
Hi,
Welcome.
and thanks for doing this, Tia. Really appreciate it. So this is kind of a two-parter. I'll try to keep it tight. So I guess the first thing that I'm sort of interested in is a lot of the discussion of politics ends up sort of focusing on how things are happening in the halls of like the legislature or the Attorney General's office, et cetera. But there are a lot of, small scale political things that happen every day in the membership. And it feels like this is sort of matched to an issue that is sort of an open, secret that's being addressed by things like this, which is membership like activation and people's engagement in, realizing the power that they can have as workers collectively. And so I'm interested in what forms of like political education, whether that's in terms of like the history of the labor movement or the, capacities that you can have by starting a committee or, things that your rank and file members can have access to so that they don't feel like they have to wait till they raise their hand on the Zoom call to feel like they're actually engaged in the union, and so that they don't feel like they're talking to the union, but that they feel that they are the union. And then the other sort of part was, the S word, strike, which I think is something that none of us want to nobody wants to have to go on strike. But I think that, and I understand that we have a no strike clause and that that's been a sort of long running thing with the union, but the United States, speaking of the history of the labor movement, has had no strike clauses forever, and they didn't always, operate accordingly. And that changed when the window of how people, of public opinion essentially changed in like the 80s, but that's not the world that we live in anymore. And I'm interested to hear if the political, if the state level political committee, I'm not sure what the organizational structure is here, but if y'all have any thoughts or are sort of how you're engaging with the way that people are really on unions' sides right now. And like, if something did come to that, I think people would be in support. I think that it would be and you would have to get out there and make the case, but I don't think that it's like Reagan with the air traffic controllers. I think that we're out of that headspace, and people want fighting militant unions. And I want to hear what we can do to be a part of that.
Thank you, Austin, for your question. Those are really, really good questions. So I'll start off with the first one. Getting members engaged. How do we get them trained? I know Kirsten from our state council team is on the line, and she has led for many years COPE training for members to train not only your political team, but really to train members about the power of politics in the union. So that's one way that we've been able to kind of engage members on kind of the strategies and things that we can engage in. We're happy, Bill, to work with your political team about doing some of those trainings. We do it quite often. and can work in partnership with you guys to do that. I think they can be very, very powerful, Austin, and we've used them again over the years, and they've had a huge impact, I think, on our members' education and advocacy. So that's one thing there. And secondly, as it relates to the right to strike, that's a tough one, right? That's a tough one because of what I think the Reagan era did with traffic control. I mean, of course, the legislature, especially the governor, understands how imperative state workers are and the function that you guys have to making sure that our government and our state runs day by day and minute by minute. And so the idea of state workers striking, although empowering and allowing us to be able to exercise our rights as union members, they fear the shutdown of the state, which is what we actually want when we're pushing a contract, because we want to create that additional pressure. It's harder to take something that's already happened away and do it differently. It's not impossible, Austin. It's certainly not impossible, but there'll be a lot of people in the administration that I'm sure will push actively, even the current administration, actively against that, and maybe even legislators. It will be a tough push, but not totally impossible. But oftentimes that's a tough battle, especially when we already don't have the right to strike in our contract. I don't know, Bill, if you have anything else on that. I don't know if you guys have had discussions on that at all.
Well, the no strike clause is in many union contracts, and it exists for the period of the contract. One of the things that changed our negotiations with Governor Jerry Brown was he actually went to court and had the judge rule on whether or not we had the right to strike. And he lost that court hearing. And within hours of that judge's ruling that we had the right to go on strike, we had a settlement, and he basically gave us everything we asked for. But that was taking it right up to the line.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, I mean, if we were strong enough and we had enough agreement, it would be possible for us to walk out. I don't think it's possible today. I don't think we're strong enough. However, in the future, I actually hope it is possible, because if it was possible for us to actually walk out, that's such a credible threat that we wouldn't have to. We would actually get a better contract. That's the way I look at the world. And my view is only one view. But, once our contract expires, we've tried to negotiate a contract, we reach what was be considered a legal impasse, then we are in the realm where even as public sector employees, we have the right to strike. So I lost a gentleman who was actually asked those questions. We hadn't gotten to Austin yet.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So we're going to ask Austin to unmute and join us. And I'm
That
sure
was me. No, it's
Oh, it
okay.
was you.
I was gonna say thank you. I really appreciate those answers. I really appreciate the candor and sort of willingness to talk about the sort of extremes, even given that we hopefully never have to go up to them. So thank you.
Yeah, so just a quick little story about me. I participated in what I think was the perfect job action back in New York. So I was a union carpenter. It was in the late 70s. The contractors had gotten together and was trying to break the carpenters union. We had worked without a contract for, I think at that point, about 10 months. And they came out and they gave us an instruction, and the instruction was, so my job rep came out on Monday and said, on Thursday, you're going to do a job action, and you're going to cut every piece of lumber you cut 2 inches too short. Now, I was a marine construction. I was a dock builder, but I was cutting 30-foot, 12 by 12 timbers that at the time cost $1,000 a piece. And I was pretty motivated. So I set it up so that I could have 50 of them cut too short by Thursday. That was a chunk of change back then. That was twice what my house cost. but you know, of course I got fired and we went back with picket signs, but a week later, we had a new contract with everything that we asked for, plus a little bit more. So the power of unity, the power of sticking together, the power of a job action, of taking a risk, was what ended that for the Carpenters Union on the East Coast back then. But I always remember about cutting the lumber 2 inches too short. For what I did, it did make a difference. After about the fourth timber that they put up, that the rest of them wouldn't work right. But if you were framing houses, cutting all that lumber 2 inches too short means that you just don't slap another 2x4 on there. That's a 2x4 and a piece of plywood. That costs them a ton of money. So, you know, properly executed job action can be very effective. With that, enough of me. Let's move on to, I hope I have this right. Kong, can you unmute and join us? Ask a question.
Yeah, so you guys hear me loud and clear?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm actually new to the state. I've only been with the state since January, and I'm actually like getting really involved in unions. What I'm learning now is that everybody wants, or many folks want to work from home, and there's an interest in increased pay. But what I'm also hearing from you two, Tia and Bill, is that we're not strong enough. So what is a concrete plan to fully mobilize members and non-members and motivate non-members to be involved? What is your plan? We want it, you guys are pointing us in the direction of politics. Okay, so let's get involved with politics, but how are you going to mobilize us so that we are strong enough to go out and make a change for ourselves? What is the plan?
So currently, we are moving to pull 59 people off full-time from membership. So you have to be a steward all across the state to go out and talk and move program. Since June of 2021, we were not moving program internally. And when I walked in the door in March, our internal organizing budget was zero. That's a problem for us. By September, with board approval, our internal organizing will have grown to about $3.5 million annually, which is about half of where it needs to be eventually, but we're not there yet. So staff has been redirected to go out and spend every Wednesday as an organizing day. So we're now out in the field reaching people and having those conversations that we need to have to improve our membership, answer questions, solve problems, and move people, right? Part of the discussion tonight is about moving people, bringing in Tia, bringing in somebody from the outside with a different perspective, growing our education as a collective group. You know, Tia has somebody who has made herself available to me, and we have one-on-one conversations. But for you to be able to have that same kind of a conversation with her that I have, I think is empowering. And so part of our Wednesday night program is about building the unity and the strength and having you grow in your knowledge and understanding. So we do have a plan. We do have a program. The International will be coming in and investing roughly $1 million into organizing with us between now and the end of the year. All these things are in place and happening. You just haven't seen the results of all that in the field yet or in your workplace. And it is going to be challenging for us to reach out to the workforce that's become, you know, a remote workforce through telework. That is going to be challenging. That is a new dynamic that unions all across the country are dealing with. And I don't think anybody has it totally figured out yet. However, our job is to figure it out, and we are putting effort and energy into it. So I appreciate that, and please come back and join us and share more with us as we move forward.
I actually have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Okay. Knowing that we're trying to establish trust with our members, knowing how Brown went, I know that Tia has stepped up to, we're rallying behind her as well as the board. What is a concrete goal that we can see our union achieve within the next month, just to establish that trust that was lost during that period when it was completely hectic and membership dropped?
Well, my goal every day is to do the work that people expect of me. And I feel privileged to be here and be able to do this for people. I stepped up and made a very big commitment as a board member to change the direction of the local. With that, my comment pretty much since I've come into office doing this is not, my words don't matter as much as my actions. Watch what we're doing. Watch the changes we're making. We're back at the table with the state. We made a step to re-engage and at least start to rebuild some kind of a relationship with the governor's office. None of these things happen quickly. In March, the state was no longer meeting with us. Cal HR was not negotiating with Local 1000. It had left us on the curb, basically. We're back at least negotiating. We're having the conversations. We're now at least, we're working again. Somebody made the comment to me yesterday, Tuesday, that the union has become boring. And they didn't think that that was such a bad thing. So, watch what we do is what I would say, and come back and ask your questions and just be the judge of whether or not we are addressing things that are important to you over the next month.
And Bill, if I could just chime in real quick.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, and Bill said this, we have an election in 6 days. The first action item in the next 30 days is to elect folks that are going to share our values and be positioned so that when we have the telework conversation, when we move forward our contract, their values are aligned with us and we can get the MOU approved. Again, nothing's guaranteed, as Mario and I discussed earlier in the call, but that's the first step. And I actually think, not to conflict with you, Bill, I think Local 1000 is strong. I think under your leadership, Bill, and Annika and Irene on the bargaining team, there's a level of unity that we're seeing now that we haven't seen in quite some time. And the legislators, the governor see that, and they see that happening already. I hope that we can strengthen that advocacy from our COPE contributions to a united approach in communication with the legislature and the governor through individual visits, as we talked about earlier, with legislators, and introducing and educating them to our priorities. That can get done in a pretty short time frame, along with those elections, in preparation for a contract that likely will be a fight. It's always a fight, but in preparation for a contract that we can win and get on the other side of. But that's going to take unity, and we're stronger. Right. I agree with you, Bill. We're stronger when there's unity. But individually, I don't know that there's any stronger individuals than state workers. My mom was one of them, so I might be biased. there's no one better than state workers and the commitment that you guys have every day. So I think the unity is what we need to bring together to drive the legislature into what our demands are. And that can start happening, Kong, as soon as tomorrow. Right, in discussions that we're having. And I know Bill is already leading for that work to be moved in the local with all of your help.
May I make a final comment?
Sure.
I look forward to the dates of rallies, of showing unity within our union. Like you guys said, because at the end of all this, once our contract is up, if anything else, and we get nothing out of this, and we have to, and we get to the strike, I hope you guys have a plan to fully mobilize as many of us as possible to really make a powerful statement to the state that we will not stand for unfair treatment. And, this is the state of California.
Right.
In what, like we should have pride in our workers that we are compensating them well enough that they are comfortable within the cost of living at minimum. And right now, I don't see that. And so I look forward to those dates of unity, of rallying.
Getting all of us fired up over here.
Really,
Yeah.
I appreciate your comments. What I do want to just, I'll close with one thing before we take the next caller, and that's that we are working to position ourselves and signal to the state that we're doing things different. It's not the same as in the past. We're not going to accept what was accepted in the past. And you will start to see contract action and activity as early as the end of this month. And that will certainly put the state on notice that we're doing something different. So we are at work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling in tonight. Hi, Cruz. Can you unmute and join us? You've been waiting forever. I've been seeing you up there.
I know. I thought by the time I get to speak, I'll retire.
Well, I'm glad you're still here.
I was going to say, hi, my name is Cruz Naranjo. I'm a 30-plus year veteran of the state of California and at least a 14-year veteran as a steward for the SIU Local 1000. I'm more than just a veteran, I'm a survivor. I survived the Wilson administration for the personal leave days. I survived the Schwarzenegger administration for the furloughs. And, I lived to tell. Getting back to the several comments and my own input on that. Too many times people have said, the union needs to stay out of politics. What are we doing there? We need to stay out of politics. And that is just a recipe for a right to work. If we're going to rely on the favor of the legislature, guess what? No favor. And the comment earlier was made that there's no certainty in whatever party is in the governor's office. That's correct. Because, well, look what happened. Well, first of all, there's no room for complacency. We need to stay vigilant and we need to stay active. Look what happened with Davis. We thought that was assured failure. Wrong. No, the recall was successful. We got Schwarzenegger, and what happened? The furloughs. And what really burned me about that is too many times people would come up and say, so what's the union going to do? What are you going to do? I go, don't you mean what are we going to do? That's the paradigm we have to shift people from. It's not what are you all, it's what we all, us. We have to change our identity. It's not the union, it's our union, us. We all identify, we all prosper. The only way to face adversity is with solidarity. It's our slogan. We need to put the solid back in solidarity. And I think that's the key to our success. The other is someone mentioned embarrassment being another way of getting what we want or leveraging. Well, when we were ready to go on strike under Brown, a Democrat, when we were ready to go out on strike, and it was the 10th hour. It was on a Friday. We were scheduled to go on strike on Monday. We got that last minute call that said, the agreement's been signed, we're back at the table, strike is called off. Well, it wasn't goodwill that made the governor change his mind. He was going to be visiting with dignitaries that were coming to the state. And the last thing he wanted was to be embarrassed by a bunch of protesters in front of the Capitol. So you see, embarrassment does work. It's just got to know when to strike. You have to be strategic about these things, is my point. The other is, people don't understand that, they think politics is a dirty word. Well, anytime you want to initiate any kind of change in policy, that's politics. You want to make sure there's something written that says, no furloughs, that's politics. So, there's no separating the two. And like someone once proposed if there's a language that says that's supposed to guarantee no furloughs or no strikes rather, we should have the same language that says no furloughs, commensurate assurance. but that's for us to take up at the bargaining table. The other was, when we talk about the surplus that the state is sitting on a surplus, I wonder how much of that is the salary savings from years previous. I'm thinking a lot of that is just what hasn't been spent on us earlier, or what we've had to spend on ourselves in terms of concession. So how much is that is really new money versus just outstanding monies that were never granted to us? That's another way to look at that. But the point I want to get back is, as moving forward, I think the primary thing we need to focus on is, moving forward. That's the first thing. Stop looking back and start looking forward. And the other is to make it a we. It is us. We move forward. Remember, we're a self-governing entity, and people don't realize there's no room for complacency. And the reason why is people don't realize how dangerously close we've come to being a right to work state, or how dangerously close there was the movement for a national right to work law. We have to stay vigilant. We have to be watchdogs. There's no room to get comfortable, because yes, there is that anti-union sentiment out there. It's those people. They're costing you money. Why should they take your money? Yeah, so someone else could take it. That's why. Only you won't have any redress. That's the part they're not telling you. Right to work is just another way to say right to paycheck only. No benefits, no dividends, no pension, no nada. That's the flip side of the same coin that's being undefined. And then, unless someone like us enlightens the ones that are easily deceived or not paying close enough attention. That's our duty. That's the fiduciary role we serve to our members and to the public in general. So when it comes to politics, I'm tired of hearing all the we should stay out of it. We can't afford to stay out of it. If we stay out of it, we're just putting our fate in someone else's hands, and we're just begging for more furloughs. So when it comes to activism, what are we going to do? That's something we need to do. We need to activate our political activity, our political activism, our lobbying efforts, because I think it was Willie Brown that said, hey, money is the mother's milk of politics, and it makes people listen. And so, that was my comment for the evening. Thank you.
All right. Hey, Cruz, thank you. And I agree, as our society as a whole, and certainly us as a union, we need a lot more we and a lot less me. That would go a long way. I appreciate it. Hey, I got so wrapped up in the conversations tonight. We're at 8:09. So we still have a lot more hands. We do try to end on time. So we're going to thank Tia for being here tonight. We're going to hope that she had a great experience. And because we have so many hands and so much interest, we're going to hope that she'll come back and visit us again soon. And we'll capture another evening of her time in the future. Do you have some closing remarks, Tia?
I would love to come back because I really want to hear all these additional questions that all you guys have. I wish we had time for it tonight, but Bill, as soon as you tell me, we can get back and answer and just have a conversation. This is important, right, folks? We have some pivotal moves that we can make to really engage the legislature and elect a legislature that can change the dynamics for all of you moving forward. And just know the state council team, all of us are fighting like hell every day to ensure that your interests are protected, to make sure that we can bring you guys to talk to legislators, and hopefully we can also join together with our power united to affect elections that will be better off, make us better off for your contract and all the work that you guys are doing. So Bill, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you have me anytime you want me to come back, I'm down to come back. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Well, thank you, Tia. And I know there was a little apprehension, so I'm glad that you had a great experience this evening. And I want to I really do want to express my gratitude for you coming and talking with us tonight and bringing an outside perspective. Thank you, everybody. For anybody who we didn't capture tonight, Lucy, Christy, Brian, Mario, I see your hands. But we are out of time, and we will bring Tia back when we can work out the scheduling again. That's not always easy for all of us. And thank you. Have a great evening. And please do make sure that you get out and vote for June 7th for the primary. And we will come back and ask you to do some work for the fall for the November election as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, Tia.